Hi everyone, I'm Zanz, the Motivational Horsey Girl, and today I'm going to be sharing something super unexpected that happened to me on my recent Europe trip. So if you'd like to hear the whole story and the crucial life lessons that I learned from it, then keep watching. So this was going to be the biggest trip I'd ever done in my life. I'm 18 and this was my first time traveling alone. Well, mostly alone. See, my trip started with me flying from South Africa to Paris, where I met up with a friend of mine to watch a really big horse riding competition, the Longines Global Champions Tour. And we had a blast for 5 days in Paris. But that's not the story I want to tell you about. The story I want to tell you is how I got to my next destination. So I was going to work and ride at a place called Gilza, which is in the Netherlands. But the problem with Gilza is that it's a small town, so there's not a straightforward public transport route from Paris to Gilza. So I had to take a bus to Brussels and then 3 trains from there. But being from South Africa, where most people who can afford to drive to places because our public transport is questionable, I wasn't very experienced in taking public transport. Anyways, so I arrive in Brussels, ready to get on my first train to Antwerp. And I asked someone who was working at the station where I needed to go to get on this train. And he told me I had 2 options. I could either take an earlier train, which had more stops, or I could take a later train that had no stops. So I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to take the earlier train and then I'll have more time when I get to Antwerp to figure out where I need to go to get on my next train. So that's what I did. Only when I was on that train did I realize that this train was stopping every flipping 5 minutes. So I was going to miss my next one. So I then went crazy on Google Maps, like trying to figure out another plan. Eventually, I get off at the most random place in the middle of nowhere. Like this place literally wasn't even a proper train station. It had like 2 little train tracks and farmland everywhere. And I was going to have to wait here for a train to take me back to a station just before Brussels and then go from there. But it meant that I was only going to get to Gilza by 7 p.m. and I still had some grocery shopping to do and I needed to figure out how I was going to get to the place I was going to be working at. So I sat on my suitcase in the middle of nowhere and cried. I felt so alone and totally out of my comfort zone. So I decided to call my sister and we laughed about it. Well, she laughed and I very unattractively laughed and cried at the same time. But she told me that this is completely normal and that a lot of people miss their trains or get on the wrong ones in Europe. So this made me feel a lot better. And luckily I made it to Gilza without any hiccups after that. But this was not the end of my problems. I then had to do a quick shop with my wheelie bag suitcase in one hand and my trolley in the other hand. But now my next problem was that I needed to get to the yard I was going to be working at called France and Stables. And my original plan was to take a taxi or an Uber to get there. But what I didn't realize at the time is that Gilza is a small farming town. And so both of those things are virtually impossible. So my next options were to take a bus or walk for an hour. So bus it was, only that was closed. Well, the bus station was closed and the next bus was at 7:30 the next morning. So back I went to sitting on my suitcase and feeling very sorry for myself. I'd needed the toilet for 2 hours and I was starting to get really hungry. And to make matters even worse, my boyfriend, who was at a restaurant in South Africa, decided that this was a brilliant time to send me a picture of his very delicious looking seafood. As you can imagine, what I said to him would be inappropriate to share on this channel. At this point, I phoned the guy I was going to be working for. His name was Tim. And thankfully, Tim's girlfriend, Tessa, came and picked me up. And Tessa, thank goodness, invited me to have dinner with them. After that dinner, I realized that I was going to be okay working at this place. Well, I was okay, but the events that followed I definitely couldn't have predicted. But those stories are for videos to come. For now, I'm going to leave you with my 3 motivational learnings from all of this. Number 1, when things don't go as planned and you feel miserable or alone or frustrated or everything but happy, think about how this is going to make a great story and how one day you'll look back on it and laugh. Number 2, make sure you plan your trips well and don't make assumptions like me. And number 3, people are kind, and most of the time they'll help you if you ask. So don't be embarrassed to ask for help or advice. So that's what I have for you for today, but I have so many more stories and learnings to share with you. So make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of my next videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.